Good afternoon, everyone. It's just about 4:30 now, so I think we will get underway. As always, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining the call today, wherever you are calling in from. And I always like to know where you're calling in from. So if you just want to type into the chat panel where you're joining us from today, so I can get an idea of our audience, where you're all from. We've got San Francisco, Cambridge, UK, California. A lot of people from California today. Oh, Cape Town, Ireland, Oklahoma. Hello, wow, loads of people. Thank you so much from wherever you are joining us from today. Brisbane, Kim, what is the time in Brisbane? It must be getting fairly, would it be fairly early in the morning, I guess, over in Australia. So thank you for getting up early and joining us. So nice to have you all with us today. Today's webinar is about working with Office 365, and this is a topic which I haven't actually trained this on a webinar for about 3 years. It was the first webinar I did when I joined Excel with Business and Filtered. And because we haven't done it for so long, and I get so many questions about Office 365 all the time, I thought, well, we might as well do a webinar. And I will say to you, it's not a very intense webinar today. It's fairly easy and straightforward, and it might not even last an hour. So it is going to be very productive, though, if you are somebody who uses Office 365 already, or even if you're somebody who isn't really sure what Office 365 is and what you can do with it, then you're probably going to get some value out of this webinar. So one of the things I find with Office 365, and you can type into the chat if you want to, is that people just don't really understand. They're a little bit confused about Office 365. And you might just want to type into the chat panel if this is you. Are you confused by Office 365? If you can type that into the chat panel, let me know the things that you find. Nick's like, no. Yeah, quite a few people. Yes. Yeah, someone's put totally, yes. Jeff's put sort of. Yeah, I find this all the time. And these are the questions that I get. People, they sort of understand what it is, but not really. And if they do understand it, they're kind of confused about what version they're using, and also sometimes don't really understand the capabilities of Office 365. So what I'm aiming to show you today is just to give you a brief explanation of, what exactly it is, a bit of background as to why Microsoft decided to go down this route, and also then we're going to jump into Office 365 and I can show you some of the main things that you can do with it. So we're going to focus on some of the more important aspects of Office 365, so things that you'd probably use every day. But I'm also going to show you a couple of the things in Office 365 that you might never have used. You might not know what they are. You might decide they're actually really nice little applications that you might want to use further down the track. So really, it's just to give you an idea of how it all works, how it all ties together, and just show you that it's not all that complicated when you get into it. So how does that sound? Is that what everybody was expecting? If you can type into the chat panel. Yes, yes, lovely. And Claire's just saying, should I be seeing anything on the screen at the moment? At the moment, I just have a holding slide, Claire, which says working with Office 365. Lovely. All right. As always, I'd just like to briefly introduce myself. So my name's Deborah Ashby, and I'm now a freelance IT trainer and subject matter expert. And I've been doing work for Filtered, Excel with Business, Skillsology for about 3 years now. So if you're joining us from any of those websites, welcome to all of our customers. And as I always say, I've been training for quite a long time now. I've been in the IT industry for about 22 years in various different roles, and about 10 years or so IT training, mainly focused on Microsoft applications, but I do tend to branch out into other things every now and again, depending on what it is. So hopefully I have enough experience to be able to take you through this. And with regards to Office 365, I used to work for Microsoft, and all of the training that we were doing around that time was related to Office 365 and companies switching from their standard applications across to Office 365. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that as well. So let's talk about it. So why are companies switching to Office 365, and what exactly is it? The way I like to think about it is Office 365 was really the next step for Microsoft. They'd seen companies like Google, and I'm sure many of you use things like Google Apps, so Gmail, maybe you upload your files to Google Drive, maybe you even use things like Google Sheets instead of Excel. Google did that very well. They kind of had this package of applications which you could access from anywhere at any time, and you could work on all your files and documents. You didn't need to be desk-based. You could be anywhere as long as you had an internet connection. And this is where Microsoft kind of struggled a little bit around that time. They had a model which was very much static, shall we say. So we've all been used to the Microsoft model over the last 30 years, which has basically been you go and you purchase Excel or Word or Office in its entirety, you download it onto your PC, maybe you even buy it from a shop. If anybody is as old as me, I still remember going in and buying DVDs and even CDs to load my software. And then you would have that software on your PC. It was yours and you owned it. Now, that was fine, and people understood that. There would be different versions released every few years. So if you went in and you purchased Office 2013, you would have Excel 2013, Word 2013, so on and so forth. And that was the model everybody was used to. But as time moved on and businesses started to change, everyone started to move away from this very static model, and they wanted things to become accessible from wherever you were working. So what I'm trying to say here is that businesses changed and came across new challenges. And I've just got some of these challenges here. So organizations became global and they also became more complex. So you might be somebody who was working in London, but you've probably got offices all over the world. So you needed software that was going to be able to support that and enable you to work together in an efficient way. Mobile workforce, so there was less, as I just said, less dependent on geography. You didn't all have to be in the same office attached to the same network drive anymore. People were working together in lots of different offices. And your colleagues were spread all around the world. And your need to collaborate was never greater. And you were moving towards more social collaborative workflows. So you needed to be able to create a document and then straight away have somebody else in another office over the other side of the world be able to access that document. Maybe you both need to work on a document at the same time. And really the old Microsoft model wasn't really conducive to that. They needed to bring in something which was going to make all of these things a lot easier for people. So there was a dependence also on technological competence. So again, they wanted to make it easier for people to work together. So bearing in mind all of that, they brought in Office 365. And this is where some of the problems then occurred. Because everybody was so used to that old model and having your applications on your PC, switching to more of a web-based version tended to confuse people. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of that, I'm just going to run through some of the applications. So I'm just going to jump across to the Microsoft products page. Now, one thing you have to remember with Office 365 is that it's a subscription model. And again, this was a change. So previously, what we've been used to, as I said, would be going into a store and buying Office, or maybe downloading it from somewhere, and then it was yours, and you'd pay one price, and that could have been hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars to purchase the entire Office suite. Now what they've switched to is a subscription model. So essentially you're renting the software from Microsoft. And there are so many different versions of Office 365. And I think, again, this is another thing that confuses people, are all the different versions. So you can see here on this page here, which is where you can go to purchase Office 365, you have two tabs for home and for business, and it really depends what your setup is. So we might have some people on the call today who are just looking at purchasing Office 365 for themselves to use at home. But we might also have people on the call today who use it at work. So their company probably would have purchased one of the business packages. And they do differ, the for home and the for business packages. The for business ones will give you access to more applications which are business related, whereas the home packages will tend to be more centered around your general productivity tools, so things like mail, calendar, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. The home packages won't include things like Microsoft Teams, which is more of a business related utility. So it really depends where you're coming from as to which package you purchase. And you can see they get charged monthly, or you can purchase them yearly. So essentially you're renting or you're purchasing a subscription, much the same as if you've got Netflix or if you have Spotify or anything like that. You don't own it, you're just paying a subscription per month. And that's the model which Microsoft moved to with Office 365. Now you might say, okay, that's all well and good. I've gone on, I've purchased Office 365. Now what do I do with it? Let me show you some of the common complaints that I've found people go through with Office 365. So these are things I hear from people all the time. So I hear people say, I don't want to use Excel online. I like my desktop version. So they log into Office 365 and they see a browser-based version of Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and they don't like it. They think, I want to use what I've always used. So that kind of stops them when they're using Office 365. So we'll look at that in a moment. The big one I hear is it's so complicated. Google is much easier. And again, I'm sure there's people on the call today who use sort of parts of Google for things. As I said, maybe Google Drive to store your documents, which is cloud-based storage, and maybe Gmail and calendar and things like that. And what I try to explain to people about Office 365 is it's exactly the same as Google. But people, for some reason, seem to find it so much more intimidating and so much more complicated. And I think I'm probably going to blame Microsoft for that in the messaging which they put out when they released Office 365. It just completely confused people. Another big thing I hear is I don't understand which version I am using. And this one I can really understand. So again, as I said, historically, we've all been used to using versions of Microsoft application, whether it be 2010, 2013, 2016. So what version are you using when you download Office 365? Well, essentially, you're using a versionless version of the Microsoft applications. And I'll show you that in a moment. But the good thing about Office 365 is that it updates automatically. So essentially, in the past, we've had different versions, so 2013 to 2016, which when they were released would be different from the version before. So it would contain updates and bug fixes and new features. We don't need that now because Office 365, if you have the subscription, it automatically and continuously updates with anything new that Microsoft released. So it does away with the need to have all these different versions. You automatically get it. And the great thing is that you're always guaranteed to be using the most up-to-date version of Office because it automatically updates. So that's another advantage of switching to Office 365. And then also I'm overwhelmed by all the choices. And as you saw on that page I just showed you, there are a few different choices. And it really is just a matter of reading down and thinking, what am I going to use this for? Again, if you're in an organization that already has Office 365, they probably will have purchased the correct version for you anyway. But if you're a home user, you might want to have a look at the 3 different options that you have and see which one's going to best serve your needs. So once you get into it, it's not too confusing to try and work out which one you want. So those are some of the common queries I hear about Office 365. All right, shall we take a look at it? Because there's some things which I think, as I said, a lot of people find quite complicated. Now, I'm just going to open up a new browser and I'm going to log into something called portal.office.com. Now, you can also just go into office.com. So anywhere you have an internet connection, if you type in office.com, I have to type in portal just because of the way my setup is here, but you can type in office.com and it will take you to your login page. Oh, and mine's logged straight in because I was in there earlier. If you haven't logged in before, it will ask you for your login credentials. So whichever login you use or email address and password you used when you your Microsoft email password. Now, when you log in, it will take you to this portal here. And this is an entirely web-based portal. So as I said, I could be sitting on a beach in Thailand, I wish, and I could access my mail, my calendar, my documents. I could use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all from that beach, as long as I've got an internet connection. I can also collaborate with my colleagues and share files as well, just with an internet connection. I don't need to be connected to an internal network drive or anything like that. I also don't need to be emailing documents backwards and forwards to my colleagues because I can use the cloud services from within here. Now, this is one of the big things that confuses people. When people say, I don't like the online version of Excel, and let's just jump into it so you can see. So here we have a list of all the apps that are available to me. So you can see I have Outlook, which is my email, OneDrive, which is my file storage. I then have my core Microsoft applications, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. I have access to SharePoint, I have access to Teams, Yammer, and a whole host of other things. So let me just jump into Excel so you can see why people don't like this version. And I'm just going to create a new blank workbook. So I'm now working in Excel Online. So this is Excel Online, and this is very similar to Google Sheets, not by the way it looks, but sort of in the way it functions. You're functioning from entirely within a web browser. Now, this probably looks slightly different to Excel that you're used to on your PC. And I will say Excel Online is a slimmed down version of your desktop Excel, okay? So you don't have as much functionality in the online versions, but you do have a lot of it. So you'll find that most of the things that you'll want to do when you're on the go, when you're not in the office, you can do in this version. And this is the same for the Word and the PowerPoint that you have within the portal as well. So if we look at the home ribbon, you can see that I have, this is pretty similar to my native version of Excel. I have all of my functionality there. If I go to the insert ribbon, I pretty much have everything from within here. So I can do things like create pivot tables, insert shapes, do charts. The data ribbon, a few less options, but for the most part, I can do pretty much anything I'm going to want to do. We have a review ribbon, and we also have a view ribbon as well. So you could work entirely from within Excel Online if you wanted to. You could create a spreadsheet here and you could save it into OneDrive, and then somebody in the office 1,000 miles away can then access that file. Now, I understand why people tend to say that they don't like this version. You're correct, it doesn't have as much functionality. If we compare it, if I open up Excel just here and open up a blank workbook, you'll see it does look fairly similar, but there are some differences, and there are differences in the general way that it looks as well. Now, what I say to people is, don't worry, because you can still have your desktop applications even when you're using Office 365. And this is what confused people first of all. They felt this was the only version of Excel that they had access to if they were subscribed to Office 365. And that's not the case. Let me show you what I mean. If I close this down, so I'm just going to close that tab, and I'm going to go back to let's go to all apps. Actually, let's go back to Office 365. So if I go back to the home page here, the first thing I would do when you get to this portal, the first thing you're going to want to do is click on Install Office, this button just here. And what this will do, and I can just do it very quickly, is it will allow you to install desktop versions of all of your Office apps. So if you click Office 365 apps, it automatically starts installing, and you can see there it's loading up the exe file for me. And I can just run that and it will walk me through the setup process. And what I have then are my applications down here, my desktop versions of my applications. And these will all have the version of Office 365. They won't be 2016, 2019, 2013. They will be Office 365 versions. So the portal, in a way, is just a place where you can install the latest Microsoft applications, but it also gives you access to this handy browser. So if you are in an internet cafe on the other side of the world, or if you only have access to Wi-Fi, you can open files and you can do minor edits. That's the whole point of this portal. It's not meant to be a replacement for your applications. You can still have all of those just by installing them onto your PC, which is exactly what I have done. And you'll see down here, I have pinned Word, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. Okay, so look at this portal as a great way to use your applications and do all the basic things you need to do when you're on the go. It's not the only version of your applications that you have. Does that make sense to people so far? Give me a little yes in the chat panel. I can see lots of questions coming in. As always, I will leave them to the end, so hold fire on that. Yes, wonderful. All right, I can see lots of questions coming in about OneDrive and file storage, which is handy because that's what I'm going to talk about in a moment. So you can see how it all ties together. All right, let's have a little look at some of these things. So first of all, this dashboard page that you can see you have access to lots of things. As I said, online versions of your applications, your install button to install your desktop versions. And as you scroll down, you've got access to recent documents, things you've pinned. I've got access to my OneDrive documents and some stuff that I've got in SharePoint. So obviously yours will look different to mine, depending on how you've got it set up. But this is a good place to come for your recent documents, so on and so forth. So let's jump into Mail first of all, before we get onto OneDrive, which is the thing which a lot of people are interested in. Let's click on Outlook. All right, so again, this is Outlook and this is your mail online. Okay, so again, this looks very different from native Outlook on your PC. You can still have that on your PC, as I said. It will download along with your other applications. This is just a way of, again, being able to access it online from wherever you are in the world. So you can see here, I have my folders down the side and this will all synchronize. So if you've created folders in Outlook on your PC, then they will synchronize with what you have in here. Okay, so if I was to add a folder in Outlook on my PC, I will see it in the online version here. Now, there's a couple of different versions or different ways that you can look at Outlook when you're online. And you can see here over in the corner, it says the new Outlook, and I currently have that turned on. So I'm looking at the latest version of Microsoft Outlook. Now, Microsoft tends to do this occasionally. They'll have a new version, and before they actually release it live, they will give you the option to switch to the new Outlook. Or if I toggle this off and say, it will switch me back to the old version of Outlook, which looks slightly different. And you can kind of have a choice as to how you want to view it, whichever way you prefer. So the new Outlook will be kind of the latest version. And this operates, I'm sure we've all been using email for many, many years. I'm sure you don't need me to explain to you exactly how email works, but you do have, as I said, your folders down the side. I can expand my inbox and have access to my different folders down here. This is new for Outlook, focused inbox, which I've got turned on currently. And what this is, it's a way of Outlook decluttering your inbox for you. And this is a completely optional option in Outlook. You can either have this turned on or you can turn it off if you don't like it. And Outlook analyzes your emails and it makes a decision based on things you've done in the past as to which ones are the most important, and it will put it into this folder called focused, which you see here with the underline. So it's determined that these are my most important emails. I'm not entirely sure if I would agree with that. And all the rest of my mail would be in other. Okay, this is a test account, which I don't use very often, so there's hardly anything in here, but That's the difference between focused and other. Now, if you don't like that and you want to turn it off, you can turn that off. You don't have to have them all separated out like that. You could just have them all in one inbox. So that's entirely up to you how you want to organize that. Some other things that you have which you might find useful is now when you click on an email, I have all of my options just here. I can like it, I can reply all. One thing that I do find quite useful, and this is something again which has been introduced fairly recently, is reply all by meeting. So if somebody sends you an email and you want to set up an email with that person, you can select reply all by meeting, and it will take you into your calendar and kind of make it into a meeting, which obviously you can adjust the title and any of these settings, but it will put the email into the bottom of the description and it will address it to the people who were in this email. Okay, so that's quite a nice one as well, just improving your efficiency when it comes to things like that. Now I just need to move my little webinar bar out the way so I can close that down. So a nice little option in there. You also have, whenever you're clicked on emails, like so, you have a menu bar running across the top, which gives you, again, lots of different options. So delete, archive, you can move it to junk. Sweep is just a way of cleaning up your email. You can move to different folders, and we have our good old categorize button. So if you're someone who likes to categorize things, I am one of those people, you can set up categories. And again, if you have categories set up in your native desktop version of Outlook, those will transfer across to here as well. So a really nice way of just being able to manage everything just from a web browser. As I said, I'm not going to go too much into it. Another thing I really like is if you look at the bottom of this folder list, this is again where you can switch between different parts of your mail. So if you want to switch across to your calendar, you can do that. And one thing I really like is having a tasks pane. So all of these open up in a new browser when you open them up. So I'm just going to close that down. This little tick here says tasks. So if I click on tasks, it gives me access to this whole tasks area where I can set up different tasks. And I really like this. And it's one thing that I've found, I know they've released it now, but in Gmail, which the company I work for uses Gmail, they use a mixture of Microsoft and Google products. One thing I found really frustrating when I came across from Outlook to Gmail was the fact that they had no native ability to have tasks lists. So I found that really, really useful, being able to type out to-do lists, tasks from within Outlook. And they didn't have that in Gmail. They do now, but Outlook has had it for a lot longer and is a lot more functional than the one that you'll find in Gmail. So I can create task lists, I can mark things when I've completed them, I can add new tasks, I can sort them, loads of stuff I can do there. And again, that's all accessible from within this Office portal. So that's a nice little feature to be aware of as well. All right, let's jump back. So I'm gonna open up, and in fact this is a new tab, so I'm going to close it down to go back to my main area here. Now OneDrive, this is the thing that I think people want to learn most about. OneDrive is cloud storage. So again, if you're used to using things like Google Drive or maybe Dropbox, we're all aware of that concept now where we have files on our PC, we upload them to Dropbox or Google Drive, and then other people can access those files. That is exactly the same as OneDrive, and for some reason people that I talk to seem to think that OneDrive is completely different to those two applications. It's actually not. It's exactly the same. It's cloud storage. So let's jump into my OneDrive because there's a few things which you need to know. All right, so you're getting a little glimpse into my life now, having a look at my folder structures. So this is all of my files, and I save all of my files into OneDrive. I have for many years. I don't tend to use Google Drive. I've always preferred OneDrive, if I'm honest with you. And this is my folder list within OneDrive. So I have a lot of folders here for things like blog posts, and if I click on it, you can see all of my documents that I have in there. I can click back on files to take me back, so I can just use that little breadcrumb trail. And this is how I organize all of my documents. And you can see down here stuff which I've used for testing and training purposes, which I haven't filed or deleted yet. Now, the way that OneDrive works, now you could use this entirely online if you wanted to. So if I wanted to create a Word document and have it save into OneDrive, I can come into here and I have a new button just here. I can create a new folder, I can create a new Word document, I can create a new Excel workbook, I can create lots of different things. So let's say I wanted to create a new Word document. Let's click on Word document. It will open up in Word Online, which again, some people don't particularly like this version, but it will open up in there. And one thing you'll notice about these applications online is that there is no save button. Again, this really confuses people. There's no save, but there is a save as. And you'll see with save as, it says I can save a copy online or I can rename this file. Now I'm going to choose to rename this file and I'm just going to call it test for training. Oops. And click on OK. And you'll see now at the top, it's renamed that file as test for training. And I don't have a save button because if you're working online, it's automatically saving every few minutes. So everything is always up to date, not even a few minutes, a few seconds. So anything you do, it does an automatic save. So you never have to worry about constantly going in and doing Control S or File Save. It's constantly saving any changes that you make. That's why you have no save button. Now, if this also looks a little bit different to you, this is because it's the new simplified ribbon layout, which Microsoft now decided to go with in Office 365. In an attempt to make it a little bit easier for people, you can see that this does look different to the ribbon structure that you're used to. This is very new in Office 365, and you can see here at the top, we have simplified ribbon is turned on. If this is all too much change for you, you can toggle that and it will take you back to something which you're probably a little bit more familiar with, which is the old ribbon structure. So if you jump in there and you think, whoa, this looks completely different, just toggle that button up there. And I can then go away and I can start to type my document. This is a document, I just cannot spell today, document for training purposes. And you can see as I'm doing that, it's saying saving in that top bit there. So every time I type, it's actually saving my document. So that means if I close it down, so I'm just going to click close just here, and I'm going to refresh my OneDrive just by refreshing the browser and scroll down. You can see there's my document, test for training, and it's all saved into my OneDrive. So again, if I'm on the other side of the world, I can log into my portal, go into OneDrive, and I can access my document. Any new document that you upload, you'll see it will have this little kind of icon next to it, which looks like a bit like a sunburst, which tells me that that one is actually new. And you can see there in that column, it says that I uploaded this a few seconds ago. I can then go back into that document just by clicking on it. Again, it will open in Word Online and I can go in and I can make my edits. So very simple, don't have to save anything, I can just work. A couple of other things in here, if I select this document, you'll see as soon as I select it, I then get a whole host of things I can do with it in this menu at the top. So I can share it, so I can click on share. And this is very similar again to Google Drive. You can share documents and you can choose who you want to share them with. So I can enter an email address of somebody that I want to share it with, and I can choose their access level. So if I want them to allow them to edit it, who I want to share it with, so on and so forth. So you have lots of different options when it comes to sharing. I can also just copy the link if I wanted to. So if I didn't want to share it from within OneDrive, I just wanted to paste a link to it into an email, I could do copy link, and then that will copy it to my clipboard and I can paste that into an email to send to people. So again, a really nice way of being able to share your documents. Works exactly the same as those other applications. I can do things like download it. So if I actually want to download it onto my PC, I can do that. I can delete it, I can move it, copy it, rename. Flow, that will allow me, I'll show you Flow in a moment, that's another application entirely. And I also have version history. And this is one of the things I really like within OneDrive. Now, there won't be much version history on this document because I just created it. So let me choose something like this one, which is a bit older. If I click on version history, you'll see I get a list of all the different versions of this document. So each time I've reopened it and made changes to it, it automatically creates a new version. You don't have to create versions, it's done for you. So if I was to open this again and make a change, I would have version 6 listed at the top there. And one of the reasons I like this is because if you decide that you want to go back to an earlier version, you can do that from here. So you can go in and you can say, okay, I want to restore this older version if you want to. So you have the ability to roll back changes essentially by restoring older versions of any document. So that's quite a nice little feature also. Also in here, if you click on these 3 little dots, again, you'll get most of those same options that you have running across the top in this little menu just here as well. So lots of different things that you can do. Now, again, one of the big things that people say is, I don't like working in a web browser. I prefer to open my file on my PC in its native application and work on it. Now, you can do that with OneDrive. So you can see my folder structure here within this portal, but let me just show you. If I jump across to Windows Explorer on my PC, if you look here, let me make this a bit bigger so you can see. You can see here I have exactly that structure on my PC. So I have all the same folders on my PC that I have available in my portal. And this is because I have it synchronized to my PC. So what that means is instead of coming into OneDrive in this portal every single time I want to work on a file, I can just open Windows Explorer and open the file from here, and any changes I make will synchronize back to the online version, if that makes sense. So it means you don't have to go into this portal every time you want to work on a file. So how do you do that? That is the question. How do you go from having things in here and getting them onto your PC just here? That is where this sync button comes into play. So at the top here, if I hover over, it says sync your OneDrive to your computer. And again, if you've used applications like Dropbox or Google Drive, you have exactly the same options with those as well. You can click sync and it will sync those files to your computer. So I'm not going to do it because obviously I already have them synced, but if you click that, you can go in and you don't have to sync everything. You can select specific folders if you want to. I know one of the big concerns, and this is a concern for me as well, is space on my hard drive. And that is something you have to think about. If you have thousands and thousands of files in OneDrive, and then you attempt to sync them all to your local PC, you might find that you run out of space. So you need to be a little bit mindful about how many files you're actually syncing, and also think to yourself, do I actually require every single folder to be synced to my PC, or do I just want the ones that I use most often? So you will have that choice when you go into sync, and it will sync those folders that you've specified to your PC. So what that then means is I can go into here and I can open up any of these. So you can see there, the file that we just created online was test for training. And you can see already that's synced back to my local folder. So I could open it from here. And it will open up in my native version of Word. So I'm no longer working online, I'm in my native version. And I can go in and I can make another change. And I can save, and you'll see here now, if you are saving to OneDrive, you get the little save icon with those little arrows on it. So that shows it's sort of refreshing as it saves. So I'm going to click on save. That will refresh my changes back to OneDrive. So if I was to then go back into the web browser, and again, I'm just going to refresh for good measure. those changes which I just made will be updated in here as well. And there you can see this is version 2. So you can kind of switch between the two versions. It makes it very easy, but don't feel that you can only access files that are stored in OneDrive through the browser. Again, this is really just if you're on the go, if you're out and about, then you can access them from a web browser from wherever you are in the world. But again, you can do it from here if you have them synced, okay? And that is through that sync button. One of the other good things about this is being able to have multiple people collaborating on documents at the same time. So again, if I've got this document open, so if I open test for training, and I don't have any friends in here with me today, so unfortunately I can't show you, but if somebody else or somebody, again, if they're in an office on the other side of the world, if somebody else is in the same document, what you'll see at the top here is it will show you who's in that document, and you can both start working in the same document. So it's great for collaboration. It means you might be on a call with one of your teammates in a completely different office. You might be talking about a document and you might want to make live changes together on that document, and you can see as they type, it will show on here. So with regards to collaboration, it's really great if lots of you are all working on the same document in real time. So that is something else you can do if you're using the online version. So a really good way of utilizing those functions. So that's a really brief explanation of OneDrive. I hope that clears up some of the issues that people have with it. It really does just work the same as Google and all of those other applications. Does that make sense to people? Again, I know we've got some questions coming up. I can't answer them when we're training, but does that make sense so far? Yes? Yes? It's probably some people still thinking, doesn't make sense. Is it easier than Google? It's the same as Google. Tanya's put very helpful explanations. Thank you, Tanya. This is what I'm just trying to achieve in this session, is really just to demystify it, because there's so many people who think it's very complex, and it's actually not. It's the same as everything else that you're probably used to using. Lovely. All right. Wonderful. So that's OneDrive. I will leave you to have a little play, have a little experiment with things. Before we leave this area, one thing I would also like to say is you can, as I said, create files directly from this new button. You can also upload files. So if you have something which you've created and it's saved to your desktop and you want to put it into cloud storage, you can upload any files from your local drives from here, or an entire folder if you wanted to. So very nice and simple to use. Let's close that down. Now, I've already had a brief look at Excel and some of these applications like Word. Again, this isn't a Word or Excel training session specifically today. Again, I will leave you to have a little play around. As I said, they are more limited versions than the desktop versions, but most of the things you'll want to do, you'll be able to do in these online versions. Excuse me. So a couple of other things that you may not be used to, and I'm going to just click on Explore All Your Apps. This will take me into my apps page. I have a couple of useful little videos up there. And this shows you all of the apps that you have access to with an explanation. So if you're not sure what each of them are, this is quite a nice place to come into, because it will tell you all of these different apps. And I will say, the apps you have access to vary depending on which version of Office 365 you're using. So if you're a home user or you've purchased the personal subscription to Office 365, as I said, you might not have access to things like Dynamics 365, Teams, because they're more business related. If you do have a business subscription, or your company does, you'll probably see that you have fairly similar to what I have here, because I am logged in using a business subscription that my company offers. So a couple of things that I think are quite useful, which people don't tend to know about. We've got things in here like forms. So if you're somebody who wants to be able to create surveys, quizzes and polls very, very quickly, this is a really nice way of doing it. And you may be used to using things like SurveyMonkey and things like that, things you have to pay for. If you just want to do a quick survey or some kind of poll, you have an application called Forms, which will allow you to do that. And again, all of these applications are really straightforward to use. Like, you don't really have to have too much knowledge. It's fairly straightforward. So if I want to do a new form or a new quiz, so let's just say new form, I can go in here and maybe I want to do a training needs analysis, something like that. And I could enter a description, and I can then go through and I can add a question, and I can specify if I want it to be a multiple choice answer, a text answer, a rating, or a date, and there's probably a few more things in there, ranking, so on and so forth. So if I say choice, and I'm going to click on choice, and I can then enter a question. So I might put, which application do you use most often? And then option 1 might be Excel, option 2 could be Word, and I can add an option down here, and it's given me choices as well. It's recognized what I've typed in, so I might say PowerPoint, and I can go on adding more and more if I want. I have the option to allow them to select multiple answers, so if it's more than one answer, maybe they want to select 2 or 3, I can toggle that bit on, and I can then add another question if I want to. So I could click add a question and go through and add another question if I needed to. So really nice and straightforward. And as people respond to your forms, because you do have a share button at the top here, so once you've finished your form, you can go in and you can share that with your organization or somebody else. And as they respond to the form, you'll get a list of all the responses down here with some very basic analytics as well. So if you're just doing a very quick form or a survey that needs to go out, forms is actually a really nice way of doing that. So that's worth having a little explore around as well. So that's one which people don't tend to know is there. Another one is flow. Now this can be quite useful. This is to create workflows between your applications. So this helps to automate time-consuming tasks. And again, I'll just show you a very basic example. So let's jump into flow. As you can see, it says start automating your workflows quickly with these select Office 365 templates. So what it allows you to do is you can select from numerous different templates down here. And for example, if we look at this one here, it says save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive for Business. So imagine if you get a lot of emails which contain documents and attachments. Ordinarily, what you would probably do is you'd read the email and then you might download the attachments, the Word documents, and then maybe upload them to OneDrive. This is a way of automating that entire process. So if you know that any attachment you receive in an email, you want to save that into a folder in OneDrive, you can have that happen automatically by creating a flow. So you could select add to add this flow, and it will allow you to set up that workflow essentially, saving you time. So you're not having to download the files and then upload them. Flow will automatically do it for you. Okay, so you can then, it will add it to your list of flows, and you can then manage that flow where you can adjust the different settings. So you can see here the connections it's made. So it's made the connection between my Outlook account and my OneDrive for Business account. It's done that automatically. So I know now that if I get an email with attachments, it's going to save them into a folder called, I think it's called email attachments, and all of those documents will automatically go into there. It's saving you a lot of time. And there are so many different types of flows that you can do, all different kinds. Even if you're somebody who has, if you like to post things to Twitter, there are flows for Twitter where you can type something in one application and it will automatically tweet it. Things like that. If you upload images to Instagram, you can get those to download somewhere else. So flows is definitely worth having a look at to help you automate your life, so you're not wasting time doing just sort of general admin on your account. So flows, another good one to have a little look at. One of the other things I like in here, if I can find it, is Sway. Again, another thing which people don't know too much about. This is really, really nice. If you're somebody who does a lot of PowerPoint presentations currently, or you have to put together nice presentations, Sway is a really nice thing for you to start to have a look at and play around with. So again, let me just show you what a Sway is, because again, tends to be something people don't tend to go into very often. So I'm just creating a new blank Sway. And what I have here at the top is I have storyline and design. I can toggle between these two. So I'm going to stay on storyline. And just to show you how this works, I'm just going to click on where it says background. And I have a load of different choices of backgrounds I can use. So let me say nature, and you could upload your own images. I'm just going to drag and drop an image into here. And maybe my presentation is on about best travel destinations 2019. Something like, oops, best destinations 2019. And what you can do here is you can build up a presentation. So I've got lots of ways that I can edit this, and I can then go in and I can add different things. So if I wanted to add some text, I can go in and these are the best travel destinations of 2019. I'm still not getting that destination spelled correctly. And as I'm doing this, if I click on design, it's going to show me what that's going to look like as I type it. So it sort of puts it into a really nice way of presenting things. And obviously there are different templates that you can use for this. I can go in and I can add other things. So if I wanted to add, let's have a look, a grid of images. I'm just going to drag some more images down here so you can see how it works. And go back to design. You can see I now have, I'm building up my sway. It's starting to kind of build out a little bit. And you can make these things clickable, so it will take people through to different things. So it's just a really nice way of building up a really nice presentation. And once you've built your sway, as I said, it's very simple. You just click the plus and you choose what element you want to add in. You can then play that back. So if I go to design, there's a play button up here. And it will just show you what it looks like. And you can then share that with people as well. So they can open it and they can see your really nice presentation. You can also convert it to a PDF. So if you're somebody who creates quite nice looking PDF brochures, you can use Sway for that as well. So it's a different way of making really nice presentations, an alternative to PowerPoint that's more modern looking, a little bit more dynamic. It's a really good tool for 2019, I like to say, very modern looking. So again, another one that I would have a little play around with. So those are sort of some of the applications. Another one I would suggest to you to look at is Planner. If you have access to Planner, and let me just, a little webinar panel's in the way again. Close that down and go back to here. Another one is Planner, and I would leave you to look at that one as well. If you're somebody who likes to have to-do lists, task lists, things like that, you can start to create different plans. So I like to have here my to-do list, and you can add different buckets. So I can have completed items, work in progress, running across here, and I can move my to-dos around. So again, this is a sort of really, really nice to-do list, which allows you to organize the work that you have coming up, completed work, so on and so forth. And everything in Office 365 is shareable, so people can all access things that you're working on. So it's just a really nice way of bringing people together. I'm going to leave it there because we've got 5 minutes left, and I do want to take some questions because I've given you a lot of information. But really, the main thing I want to convey here is that whilst you may not have been familiar with some of these applications located within the portal, please don't think it takes away anything from the way you currently use Microsoft. You still have access to your applications. You download them, you have access to them, you can use them in the same way. If you don't want to save into OneDrive, don't save into OneDrive. If you prefer to save to your documents folder or your desktop or a company network drive, you can still continue to do that. But just be aware that as long as you've synced OneDrive from the portal to your local drives, you can use it in the same way as any other folder, and it just makes it more accessible for you wherever you're working from. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an explanation as to what Office 365 is and the things that you can do with it, and a little bit of a glimpse at some of the things which you may not have known were in there. And hopefully it's whetted your appetite a little bit, and you're going to go away and you're going to have a little play around and see the types of things that you can do. All right. A lot of talking for me in that one. Let me jump across to the questions pane, because I can see we've got 12 questions. in here, so I'll try to get through them. So Tina's put, when you create a file, who can access it once you save it into OneDrive? That is an excellent question, Tina. Let me show you who can access it. This little webinar panel is really getting in my way. I'm going to have to move that down a bit. Right, so let me go back to OneDrive and show you, because there is actually a column which shows you this exact information. So you can see here, for anything that you save into OneDrive, you have this final column here says sharing, and it shows you who it's shared with. So by default, when I create a file in OneDrive, it's just private to me, unless I share it with other people. As soon as I share it, this will change in here and it will say shared, and you can click on that and you can see who you shared the document with. But by default, everything is private to you until you click on it and go to here and choose to share it with somebody else. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's have a look at the next one. How can you protect a file from sensitivity information? It depends how you want to protect that file with regards to, do you mean, do you want them just to be able to view and not edit, that kind of thing? If you want to, as I said, everything is private to you. So with regards to sensitive information, unless you choose to share it, it is going to be private to you. When you share a file, you get the option as to how you want people to be able to access that file. So you can choose from numerous different options, and one of them is they can edit or they can view. So you do have some protection information in there. Again, pretty much the same as what you would have if you're uploading to Google, if you're uploading to Dropbox. Let's have a look. Kim, comment, Microsoft does a terrible job of explaining their changes to Office 365. I agree. Just try buying online Office is like pulling teeth, despite being multinational, only offers Office in specific languages. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the rest of the comment because it's quite long. Yes, I would agree with you, Kim. This is exactly what I said. As somebody, I was a trainer who was training Office 365 when it was first released, and I was training it all over the world. And yes, I agree. It was very difficult at the time, and it still is, to get an explanation as to what Office 365 is and all the different buying options. With regards to purchase and subscription, I haven't experienced that being particularly difficult from the website. With regards to different languages, again, I don't know sort of what their language support is. I can't really answer you on that, but I take on board your comment completely that yes, it probably isn't great if you're wanting to use the applications in lots of different languages or different languages. Let's have a look. Leo, I use Yahoo ATT email. If I switch to Outlook, which I now only use for calendaring, is it possible to move over to Outlook all of my Yahoo folders? Yes, I would, Leo, honest with you, like I don't have a Yahoo account. I would jump onto Google for that. I'm sure that is a question that many people have had, migrating folders from one email application across to Outlook. I have been part of Outlook migrations before, so yes, I know it can be done, but Yahoo specifically, I can't tell you. I would jump onto Google for that, or even YouTube. I'm sure there's lots of people who have instructional videos on there. But I would say yes, you can, with most applications these days, you can port folders across. Let's have a look. Andrew, if you stop your subscription, can you still access your files on the cloud? I believe you can. I don't think they, it depends if you have them synced with your PC. So if you cancel your subscription, then it will cancel your access to the portal. You won't be able to log in. Your email address won't be valid. So you wouldn't be able to come into the portal and access your files. But if you have them synced to your PC here, then yes, they won't remove from here, they just won't synchronize any longer with the online version. Let's have a look. Barbara, I have been given Office 365 at work. I do not have a hard drive any longer. Does this mean that all my files are backed up on a server or in the cloud? Yes, it does. So all your files will be in the cloud, and those files are backed up. So yes, that's one of the advantages of moving to the cloud. Let's have a look. How would you delete the files from your local PC without affecting the online version? Really great question. So if you wanted to delete a file off of here, but have it still remain, and that's what I'm assuming you mean. You wanted to delete a file from within OneDrive on your actual PC, but you don't want it to delete from the online version, you would need to stop the synchronization, because anything you do here will synchronize automatically. Now you'll see down the bottom in my status bar, can you see I have these little cloud icons? Those are both of my OneDrive. So I have two. I have a personal OneDrive, which is this one here, OneDrive Personal, and I have my business OneDrive, which is the one that we're looking at now. And this is where all the syncing goes on. So when you're syncing, you'll see little arrows appear down here. What I would need to do is I can do things like I can pause the syncing, I can stop the syncing, things like that. So that would be the only way that you'd be able to stop it from synchronizing, would be to pause the syncing, which will stop all synchronizations between your folders. Let's have a look. Next question. Will installing from the portal affect the already installed apps that I have on my laptop, the current Word, Excel, MS Teams apps that are in my desktop? Let me think, because that's a really interesting question, because I'm actually using Office 2019 apps because I'm writing a course at the moment, so I don't have Office 365. And when I launch, I get Office 2019. So it looks to me like I don't have access to 365. I would say that I don't think it will delete the download file that you have on the PC, but if you install Office 365, it's probably going to be your default when you open things. Ordinarily, you can't have multiple different versions of Office running on the same PC. This is a problem I have as a trainer who trains in multiple different versions and has to write courses. I very often have to uninstall my old version and reinstall the new version in order to be able to work with that version. So yes. Let's have a look. Form survey. How do responders from Share receive the survey? Great question. So if you're sharing a form, what will happen is they will get it in an email. So it will come in an email and it will say, Rich has shared this survey with you, and it will give them a link. And they click on the link and it goes through to the survey. So it will be in an email. The same thing if you were to share a OneDrive file with somebody by their email address, they'll receive an email and have a link to the file. Rich, can you explain a bit about SharePoint? SharePoint would probably be another hour of training, so I'm going to hold off on that at the moment because we are just about out of time. Brian, what is Yammer? That's a great question. So Yammer is I like to call it Facebook for business. So it's very similar to Facebook when you look at it, even the way it's kind of set up and the structure. It's just another utility for groups to come together and be able to share documents, files. It contains a chat system. So if you're used to using things like Slack or Skype, it's kind of similar to that. It combines a few different things into one where people can go, set up groups, collaborate on documents, things like that. But it kind of looks like Facebook. It's a social network kind of for business. Why have different versions of Office come out since Office 365? That is a great question, Dee Dee. So yes, so the versions, so 2013, 2016, 2019, those are really for people who haven't subscribed to Office 365. So most people are moving to Office 365. There's also a lot of people still out there who haven't for whatever reason. So some businesses haven't moved to Office 365 for various different reasons. It might be because of internal procedures or systems that they have. They prefer to stick to the native applications. So Microsoft is still continuing to release different versions or standalone versions for people who haven't switched to Office 365. Let's have a look. When creating a questionnaire and forms, can it be sent to people via standard email, or is it necessary to have them for 365? Yep, you can send it to anybody. There's an option in there to create a link, so you can just create the link and paste that into an email and send it to whoever you like. Can you show again where to find the images in Sway? I can. Let's just go back to Sway. So I'm going to go into All Apps and down to, where are we? Sway. Okay, so if I do a new blank sway, and wait. Right, so here by default, it's asking me for a background. If I click on it, I get this pane. And you can search for images. You're not just limited to the ones you see here. And you can also, if you have images saved into OneDrive, you can select them from there, or you can search your local drive. So if you have it in pictures on your PC, you can connect to that from there and upload any picture you like. But if you want to use the ones within Sway, you can just click on any of the categories, or you can use the search field at the top. So you can go into backgrounds and you have a whole host of stuff in there for you to use. And let me have a look. This will be the last question because we are overrunning a little bit. Let's have a look. Will Sway files play in social media like Facebook? Oh, that's a really great question. I'm gonna say, I don't know. I would ask Google that question. I've never tried actually to put a Sway file onto Facebook. I'm just trying to think now. Let me look at the share. Let's see what we've got there. So you can get embed code as well. So you can embed I can't say that word. Embed it into websites and things like that. To give it a try. That would be my question. I've never tried, so I couldn't tell you. I would say yes. That would be my first thought. I would say yes, but I would create a basic one, put it on Facebook, see if it works, give it a go. All right, guys, thank you so much for all these questions. There are so many, but we are running over now, so I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to eat into any more of your time. I am aware that people probably have things to do other than listen to me talk. Hopefully that has given you a little bit more of an idea of the things that you can do. Have you found it useful? Type into the chat panel. Yes? Yeah, okay, good. I was a bit worried because sometimes I think with this, it's like, oh, are people going to know these things? People have been using Office 365 for a while, but I always think there are things that people don't know. Wonderful. All right, great. Thank you so much, guys. Just to let you know, this webinar has been recorded, and as usual, you will receive a copy of this webinar into your email in 48 hours. So on Friday, you will receive a link to this email. I'll also make sure that you get sent the presentation that I'm using. I'm not sure how helpful you'll find that, but some people do like to have the presentation. So I'll send that to you as well. And we'll make sure that that gets out to you. As I always say, if you've got any questions, let me just pop my email address into the chat panel. It's deborah.ashby@filter.com. That's in the chat panel now. If you want to email me about this webinar or any of the webinars that we've run, then please feel free and I'll do my best to come back to you. If not, I will speak to you guys next week, where I think we're back on the topic of Excel again next week, everyone's favorite. So I hope you have a wonderful evening, guys. I will speak to you then. Bye, everyone.